deep left center field, and the Phillies strike.
Breaking ball, popped up, shallow right. Segura going out. Castellanos coming on. Castellanos has it, and the Phillies have the National League championship.
This is Luke and I on the Phillies, brought to you by Fox Sports The Gambler.
It has been 4 months since the last time we talked on this podcast. The last title was It's Over on October 10th, 2024. That was a bit of a rough week, I would say, for Phillies fans. But we are back. Luke and I on the Phillies has returned for the 2025 season. I am Luke Arcaini, as always. This episode is brought to you by FOCO for all of your bobblehead and all of your needs in all Phillies sports. Make sure you visit FOCO. The link is in my Twitter bio on all social medias. I am here tonight with Sean Barnard, my host on Phillies Digest as well, sort of along with Fox Sports The Gambler. Sean, it's been 4 months. The last time I would say this podcast at least has talked about the Phillies was when we got basically embarrassed by the Mets. But I think over the last 4 months, the vibes have changed a little bit. Spring baseball is back. The Phillies are back. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm honored to be, kicking things off right along with you again. So appreciate you having me on, ready to chop it up. And I think we got the proper sort of, recovery time from this Philly season. Yeah. I was ready to burn this city at the stake, fight for everyone in this locker room, be so mad about that exit. It was a quieter offseason than I think I expected and a lot of people expected. But the bottom line is we've had our healing period. I'm ready to buy back into this Phillies team and excited to dive into it all.
I am ready to go all in again and hopefully not be upset at the end. I know there's a lot of talk right now, obviously, around the league. I think we all know there's one big guy on the hill in the Dodgers, and then it's sort of everyone else in the NL. I heard another sort of podcast talking about this earlier. It's really just like this National League is loaded this year. And if you look at sort of the American League compared to the National League, it's almost night and day. The Phillies are in like a war zone, sort of the National League, but really just the NL East in general. Obviously, you have the Phillies, the Braves, the Mets, but it's pretty much going to be a war zone, I would say, for 2025. But I think the Phillies are built for it, and I think a lot of people do as well, even though I think maybe it wasn't the offseason I think we sort of hoped for, but I think there's definitely a lot to be ready for so far this season.
Yeah, and I do think we're seeing a bit of the bigger plan here, that this wasn't the offseason to get sexy, make these splashy signings as much as I was hoping that would be the case, that it does feel like this is a bit of ride out what we got for this year, and then you really evaluate when you got a little more flexibility, more contracts coming off the books, and a little more that you can kind of do. They're pretty landlocked in a lot of spots. When looking around at positions, where can you actually upgrade at? I know we've had plenty of the Alec Boehm conversations, but to use that as the specific example, Alec Boehm isn't a bum of a baseball player. You have to get better if you're going to try and upgrade, and it's really hard to do that when looking around at the available options. So looking around the league, obviously the Mets making headlines, adding Juan Soto, and that being a huge factor, the biggest story of this MLB offseason. And a team like the Braves that is obviously due for a bounce back with all the health issues and injuries that they had last year. But really, when talking about this Phillies team, it's all internal, man. We know what this team is capable of. We've seen the dominant stretches that they have. It's about getting one of those at the right time. And if they can do that, they are absolutely World Series contenders.
Absolutely. And I think I read an article the other day for Crossing Broad for my weekly mailbag. And one of the questions was, what is the hole in the Phillies team? And I sat there for about 5 to 10 minutes to think about it. And the first answer I came up with was, the hole in this team is the players that have been here for the last 2 to 3 years. I don't think there's some crazy big hole in this offense. I think it's the matter of the guys that have been here playing like the guys we know, the guys like Trey Turner, the guys like Nick Castellanos, the guys like Brandon Marsh, Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm. These regular seasons, they're great. And I mean, the Phillies had the best 70-game stretch last year in the history of their franchise for the first 4 months. But, none of it matters if it doesn't happen in October. So, it's really the matter of in 2025, what do you get in October? Because, this team obviously has to make the playoffs. That's obviously the first goal, but October baseball matters more than July baseball. It matters more than August baseball. Like, realistically, once you get in the playoffs, those 162 games and those 25 spring training games, they don't they don't mean anything. And it's October baseball, and that's truly all that matters. So I think this year, I think they're sort of going into this season mad. I think they're going into this year pissed off. Not a single guy on that team enjoyed how they lost last year. They don't ever sort of enjoy losing, but I don't think they liked sort of how that season ended last year. That left a bad taste in their mouth. I mean, as it should. They got ran off the field by a division rival who simply wasn't better than them. And yeah, the Mets beat them in a 5-game series, but if you ask anybody around the league, not a lot of people are going to say that Mets team was better than the Phillies team. The Phillies were a better team. They just got ran off the field. So I think going into this year, I think they're as hungry as ever. I think the lineup's there. I think the starting rotation is gross. And I think they have a chance to do something special this year.
Yeah, and I mean, like, baseball is such a unique sport in regard to all of that, as far as getting your hot streak at the right time, peaking when it is the moment matters most, and that is the biggest key. And for this Phillies team specifically, like, they have to have a hard look at themselves in the mirror, because that was an embarrassing series. They simply should be a better baseball team than the product that was put on the field in that playoff series there. And when thinking about, like, this era of Phillies baseball, opportunity is not a lengthy visitor, man. The window closes quickly, and it's tough not to sit here and be concerned that their best chances are in the rear view. Now, I don't feel that way entirely, but it is also like you got to look around and think about the opportunities that you've missed out on to this point and really dig in to make sure that does not happen again. Now, I know we're still in kind of the positive vibes section of this podcast, but you did hit on Trey Turner there, and I did want to dig in on that a little bit. Like, if this team is actually going to produce as designed, they got to get a better version of Trey Turner, man. And I understand last year was better than the first season. There's no doubt about that. The bar is pretty low for that. But Trey Turner was signed with the expectation that this dude can be a co-star to Bryce Harper, a guy that is viewed as a fringe MVP candidate, one of the best players in baseball. That dude is yet to arrive still in Philadelphia to this point. And while, again, Turner was better last year, I'm not here to fully rag on him. Like, when you talk about what is the hole on the Phillies, you got to get the real deal protection for Bryce Harper, and you got to get guys that are producing at the caliber that their contract commands. For Turner, that's really what I have my eyes on this year, and I do think he needs to take that next step if this team is going to take full form.
I completely agree. I think when you look at, the big teams across the league, right? You look at the Dodgers. It's obvious the top is Ohtani. But then you have guys, you have Mookie Betts, you have Freddie Freeman. You look at the Mets last year, they had Lindor, but they have Alonso, they have Vientos. You look at these big Yankees teams from last year, you have Judge, you have Soto. You can't win a World Series with one guy playing like a star, right? It has to be the $300 million Trey Turner. It has to be the $100 million Nick Castellanos. The best play probably, other than Harper Castellanos, homers last year versus the Mets, was the first at bat of the series for the Phillies, the leadoff Schwarber home run.
Yeah.
And then you get shut out for 7 innings. Like, it has to be all the way through. You need a big year from Bryson Stott. You need Marsh to be able to play every day. You need big additions from Max Kepler, Jordan Romano, Jesus Luzardo. You need full contribution, because I think that's what you saw sort of back in 2022, right? Like, if you look back at that Phillies team, yes, Harper was standing on his head for 2 months straight, but playoff Schwarber was going nuts. Rhys Hoskins had 6 home runs in the playoffs. Nick Castellanos, while he didn't have a great sort of postseason that year, he was still impactful, right? These guys in the lineup there, it's not just one guy. And I think that's what it needs to be for the Phillies this year. It can't just be the Bryce show, because eventually it's going to continue to be the Bryce show. They're going to continue to lose, and then you're going to blink and Zach Wheeler's going to be 38 and Harper's going to be 35 and Nick Castellanos is going to be sort of out of his deal. And after you sort of done this year, Schwarber's contract's up, JT's contract's up, Rangers contract's up. Like, these are the years where you have to capitalize. And I don't want to harp too much back on the last few years. So I do want to start getting into spring. Because, Sean, I'm going to tell you this. I am a psychopath for spring training baseball. And I realized it today. I was sitting there watching, and I feel like this is the times where people will tune out sort of when you're getting into the 7th and the 8th inning, and the guys with no names on their jerseys are sort of running out onto the field. And this is where I was starting to get more excited. And that's where I was like, I may have an issue when the guys that have no names on their jerseys are running onto the field in the 8th inning. I have like an unhealthy obsession with spring baseball. I'll say this. I love me some Gabriel Rincones Jr. That dude is mashing the crap out of the ball right now. But what are your thoughts on, just like spring training in general? Because it's hard. Like, you can't take too much out of it. Like, I've seen Mickey Moniak hit 5 home runs for the Phillies in spring training. I've seen Scott Kingery go out and hit 600. Like, how much do you think, how much do you really take out of spring training at this point?
Yeah, I won't act like I've been living and dying on every pitch of spring training the way you are, but I'm grateful that you are. I think that's awesome there. And it is cool to get kind of a look at these guys that we otherwise wouldn't, right? Like, obviously, we know what the standard is, the expectation for the Bryce Harpers, the Nick Castellanos, but you kind of get a peek at some of these guys who are earning their opportunities. The pitching staff in particular is what I have my eyes on in spring training and really moving forward. It's kind of cool. I wouldn't even call them battles. I guess that last bench spot is the only place that I would probably throw in that battle conversation. And obviously, that was magnified due to Weston Wilson picking up an injury. Do feel really bad for Weston, by the way. I think he had the inside track for winning that. Pretty unfortunate at this stage of his career that he kind of doesn't have that clear path, but that's probably the only position I would consider like a full battle in this. The bullpen, I guess, is figuring itself out as well. But I guess for me personally, for spring training, I just think it's a cool opportunity to get a look at these guys with their like pseudo major league opportunity here, that they do have an opportunity to show what they can do. And for these names, like, you don't get that type of chance too often in front of Rob Thompson with the main squad here. So I do think it's the lower names that should be taking spring training as serious as they are.
Absolutely. And I will say there was a bit of a scare today in spring training. I think everyone probably saw it by now. I will say this is an unbelievable picture. I did not see who it was from. I do apologize, but this happened today in spring training. I will say this is a absolutely wild picture for somebody to capture. That just absolute shout out to whoever got this picture, because that is just absolutely insane. But Bryce Harper did get hit by a pitch today. Luckily, it did not get him in the face. I know the picture looks like it, but they did say it's a tricep injury. They said no x-rays will be needed. It seems like it hit him sort of like top tricep, like back of the shoulder type of thing. They did say this. So once he got hit, said he left the game and he actually drove himself back to Clearwater. So he was up and out of there the second he got out of the game. I mean, Sean, I don't think I spoke for probably 10 minutes after he got hit today. I was getting like flashbacks to like the Blake Snell pitch back in June a few years ago. That was scary, man.
It absolutely was. And I'll say I'm still holding my breath a little bit until we get a full update from the Phillies, get the status, but all signs do seem fairly positive that this isn't anything significant. And when you watch that pitch there, getting triceps, as the report, is a pretty favorable outcome, I would say, that based on the options on the table. So it has been pretty frustrating, or I guess concerning is a better way to put it. You never want to see that kind of stuff in spring training, and just like, get Bryce out of there. I'm glad he walked right out of the game, went right back to Clearwater, and is focused on getting healthy, staying fine, whatever the case may be. But yeah, I don't need to see Bryce Harper in any more spring training ball after that.
Yeah, this is where I fall back on my take of I need to see the stars maybe once a week. It's the same thing as football sort of training camp. I need 5 snaps for Jalen Hurts, 5 snaps for this whole preseason, like, the entire goal of the preseason is for nobody to get hurt. And right. I've seen Reese Hoskins rip his ACL in spring training. Like, I don't need any more Bryce action until maybe the last 3 games of the spring. I can't imagine that's going to happen. They did say, so I don't believe that he'll play tomorrow. I don't think any at all. Yeah, I don't think any of the starters are playing tomorrow. But I don't need any more Bryce. I would say at least for the next week.
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement there. Seriously, if they want to shut him down for spring training, that is fine by me. We know who Bryce Harper is. And again, I do want to wait for the full announcement from the Phillies. Again, all positive signs from what we're hearing, what Rob Thompson said, everything like that. But you never want to see something like that. That certainly was a hold your breath moment. And hopefully we just keep cruising from here.
Absolutely. I do want to get into the lineup because that is a sort of area right now where I think a lot of people are talking about. I think the big debate right now is sort of, is Schwarber out of the leadoff? Do you put Trey there? And I will say this: I am pro moving Trey to the leadoff. I've always been extremely pro Schwarber leadoff, but I think it's time for a change. And I think if you can put Trey in the leadoff spot, if that helps him, I think I'm a full go for that. But what I don't love about this, and this isn't saying that this is going to be the lineup for the regular season, is if you're going to put Trey 1, I don't understand why you would put Bryce 3 still. I think this is where you move Schwarber back to 4. I think you move Bryce up to 2 and you put Bowman the 3. I think the whole reason why they want to change the leadoff, I think they want to change the leadoff more for protection behind Bryce rather than who's actually hitting in the leadoff spot. And I think if you put Schwarber ahead of Bryce, I think you're in the same situation you were last year. Like, there's no difference of who's hitting cleanup, because right now, today's lineup was Trey, Schwarber, Harper, Bohm, right? Bohm's in the 4. He was in the 4 last playoff. So nothing's changing there. The only thing you're changing is the top 2. So I am very pro Trey in the 1, but with that, I think it needs to go Trey, Harper, Bohm, Schwarber, because I think the whole reason of this is to have the protection behind Bryce.
Yeah, and the other part to keep in mind is that you're stacking lefties if you're trying to do Harper and Schwarber back to back there, which I honestly I think people overthink that a lot. The left-hander versus left-hander, you can bring a lefty out of the bullpen. The bottom line is that you still have to go after Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. So good luck to you if that's the case. There is kind of how I feel. So if you think that's the best combo, then roll with it. But I do agree with your overall sentiment here. I have subscribed to the Kyle Schwarber at leadoff theory since the Phillies have gone about this experiment here, that I agree with Rob Thompson's outlook that there's no better way to start a game than up 1-0 there. But there's also something to trying to maximize this roster in a different way. And it does feel like it's kind of time for a shakeup there. We obviously know Turner has plenty of experience as a leadoff hitter, and he's certainly cut more from that, traditional leadoff mold there. And it is kind of interesting looking across baseball right now, like the different strategies or theories. Like, obviously the Dodgers are a clear one with Ohtani, that they just want their best hitter to get to the plate and get as many cracks at it as possible. And there's still guys that exist that are more of those traditional leadoffs. So you are kind of middling ground with Trey Turner, that he certainly has some power capabilities as well, that he is a guy that in theory is one of the best hitters on this Phillies roster. But I do agree, like, the overall premise should be, what is the best route for getting Bryce Harper the best opportunities at the plate? And I don't think that would be, in the way that things are currently filling out.
Yeah, I just think it's pretty meaningless. And once again, this isn't like the set opening day lineup, what they did today, but I think today's lineup was just like a meaningless switch compared to last year. Like, I just don't see the reason of just switching the top 2. I think sort of, once again, the whole reason that they're going to switch that is because you want more protection behind Bryce. Because last year you got into the playoffs, Harper was on a tear, sort of as he always is in the playoffs specifically. And then you went Harper 3, Alec Bohm 4, who got benched in a game, to Nick Castellanos, who actually had a very good playoffs last year, but it really didn't matter because he was 2 spots behind him at that point. Like,
And also, two playoffs ago, it was when Casty was basically non-existent, and they basically refused to pitch to Bryce.
Exactly, and they had Bohm, I believe 23, they had Bohm in the 6, because they had JT up. I think they went, because 23, they went Schwarber, Trey, Bryce, Casty, JT, Bohm. Because Bohm wasn't like last year's Bohm yet, and they had JT. It's just, it's meaningless to me. And I think if you're going to change the lineup, I think you need to change it. I think it needs to be Trey 1, Harper 2, Bohm 3, Schwarber 4. I'm also like sneakily thinking, like, is this a Bryce thing? Like,
I was going to bring that up.
Is this a situation where Bryce is like, and listen, Harper is all Philly. I'll die for Philly. I want to win a World Series. But is this turning into a situation where Harper, like deep down, like wants to stay in the 3? Because I can't imagine that this lineup got changed from Rob Thompson and he didn't even bring it up to the guys. Like there's definitely some conversations there, and I don't know. I don't want to like assume much, but it seems a bit to me like it seems like Harper kind of wants to stay in the 3.
Yeah, that's kind of my read on it as well. And I know he had the quote floating out there, basically like anti-leadoff hitter, but like he's not a leadoff
Which
hitter,
I'm cool with. That's fine. And because my big thing about the Bryce leadoff is if you don't like Schwarber there, you shouldn't like Bryce there.
Yeah.
That's my thought. And yes, Harper hits for a higher average. So I guess you could bring a basically meaningless stat in baseball at this point into account. But I don't think if you don't like Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff, then you shouldn't like Bryce in the leadoff. I think deep down, everybody knows it should be Trey. And I was very, once again, pro Schwarber leadoff forever. Because, I mean, the second he gets up to the plate, he's an immediate threat to go up 1-0. It's one of the biggest hacks in base. Schwarber hitting leadoff the last, 3 years is like one of the biggest like hacks that we've had in baseball. Like the amount of leadoff homers that he's hit over the years. But it's just, I just feel like there's something deep down that Harper really wants to stay in the 3.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And by the way, if you were going to raise me the Bryce Harper batting average, I was going to shove walks right back in your face for the Kyle Schwarber debate there.
Exactly. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do agree with that sentiment as well there. And by the way, for Bryce Harper, like he for sure is this, like, I'll do whatever the team needs. I'm Mr. Philadelphia type of thing. It does feel like that's a missing piece of the puzzle. Like something doesn't quite add up in this entire equation. So I have to imagine Rob Thompson, like in general, everything we've heard has been nothing but positive from the players. That there has to be at least some fluid conversations there. That would be interesting if that is the sticking point. I would love to hear like somebody dig in on that specific question.
Yeah, I don't know. But I just think once again, and to sort of finish this off, I think if you're going into opening day and if you want to switch it up, I think it just seems it seems meaningless to me to change it if you're not going to truly change it. So I think you're on the same page, but Trey 1, Harper 2, and then Alec Boehm 3 and Schwarber 4. That's sort of where I'm at. Are you any different with Boehm? I know you're a little iffy.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wanted to make the push for Castellanos getting moved up to the 3 spot potentially. I still think it probably makes more sense for Boehm to be the guy, but then again, we got to see what version of Alec Boehm shows up on this Phillies team. It was a night and day version of what we saw for the first half of the year, which if you get that dude should be locked into the 3 spot. I have no problem with that whatsoever. If you get the second half and then we're starting to talk about not having the protection for Bryce Harper in that exact spot, then we're doing all this moving and shaking to have the exact same issue in front of us here. So I guess for Boehm, I'm pretty much like bookmark this and let's see exactly what he looks like. I have no problem with penciling him in as to start off in the 3 spot there.
I love it. I do want to get into sort of this last bench spot because we kind of finally got I don't really think there was much of a competition. I think we can kind of say there was a few guys that were sort of in the running, but from what everyone's heard, that was Weston Wilson's job to lose, specifically because he's a right-handed bat. I mean, he can play second. He can play – I mean, he can play basically everywhere in the infield. He can play the left field, right field. He was the perfect guy for that spot, realistically. But obviously now with the oblique injury out 6 weeks, probably won't be ready till the beginning-ish week of April. So now that leads the question of where do you go? Do you go to Buddy Kennedy, who has never played an inning of outfield in his major league career? Do you go to Cody Clemens? Do you go to Cal Stevenson, who are both left-handed bats? Is it a guy like an Oscar Mercado to hold a spot for 2 weeks until Weston's ready? Or is it sort of maybe they look outside the organization? There was a report the other day that maybe they're going to look for some guys after teams start to make cuts. I'll tell you this, I've been campaigning for Adam Duvall for the last 2 years. He had a really horrible 2024, but he's a year removed from like an 850 OPS. I don't know what they do. I would say right now, I think they lead Kennedy. I will say this, Rincones Jr. is making it hard for him not to be in the running. I don't think he's ready yet, unfortunately. I still think he needs a little more time, but I mean, I would love to see the kid up there. I mean, hey, maybe they give him a shot. Like maybe they see first 2 weeks of the season he plays once or twice a week. The good thing is it's not like it's some sort of starting role. Like it's not like it's your starting left field position.
Right.
So I mean, what are your thoughts there? I mean, it seems it's probably between Buddy Kennedy and Clemens, but it seems like they're going to lean to a right-handed bat for Kennedy.
Yeah, it's a bummer because like I do think Weston Wilson would be pretty perfect for this role and will be once he gets healthy again. And again, on an individual standpoint, like I do think he kind of has earned the chance and fills a position of need, can do everything this team needs. The dude hit for the cycle last year for this Phillies team. Like I like
Weston Wilson cycle game.
Yeah, we'll never forget. We'll have that in the memory log forever there. But as far as the situation in front, I do lean towards Clemens just because I think like I have a little bit more confident in the picture of who exactly he is as a baseball player. He's a guy that's been itching for it. Also, a fun fact is Cody and Roger Clemens have the combined most strikeouts of any father-son duo in MLB history. So make sure you remember that one there. So I lean Clemens just from the stance of I'm a little bit more confident in what they're specifically getting with him. He has had some pretty big moments where, he's stepped up in opportunities when he's given the chance. So I lean Clemens, but overall, like I do think we're discussing a point or debating a point here that really is probably going to be like a handful of at-bats tops so we actually see this guy.
Yeah, it's probably about like 4 at-bats a week.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I think the injury further proves that Johan Rojas is now even more of a lock to make the roster. I think he was going to make it either way. The only tough part for Rojas is that the Phillies have the flexibility because he does have the option still. But I mean, at this point, I'd be shocked because if you go into opening day with Max Kepler, Brandon Marsh, Nick Castellanos, and then you have Johan Rojas. Say you don't have Rojas. You would have Buddy Kennedy, who has never played an inning of outfield in the majors. You have Edmundo Sosa, who they're trying to turn into like half an outfielder. You basically not have an outfielder on your bench. So it seems like to me that Rojas is a lock. But I did kind of want to like this whole Edmundo Sosa playing outfield thing. I can't tell if I like it. I'll say this. I think Edmundo should like it because I think it opens up more opportunities for him. But it does seem like he's taking it better than he did a few years ago. I do remember going into 2023 because he got here halfway through 22. They tried it in the offseason 2 years ago, and it was really bad. It did not work at all. He was just not picking up. It seems like he's picking it up a lot better now. What would your first thought be if you saw a lineup in April with Edmundo Sosa out in left field?
Yeah, I mean, Sosa was very good for this team last year. He's straight up outplaying Bryson Stott for stretches of the season there. So I think he individually should look at this as a sign of belief from the Phillies organization that they're trying to get creative and find ways to get him in the lineup and on the field a lot more often. So I think he should be viewing this really positive here. It's always weird to me, the guys that can, pick up a new position like that and some guys that it just kind of doesn't click in the same way. I feel like a spot like outfield for a guy like Edmundo Sosa, who has such clear, high hand-eye coordination and is just a good baseball player. Like it shouldn't be that difficult that he should be able to find a way to get it to click here. But at the same time, that is a big change after presumably not playing outfield in a long time, if ever, for Sosa specifically here. So I get kind of the pushback or the belief that this is my position. This is what I'm good at. But I do think you should look at it as a vote of confidence from the organization that they're trying to get him on the field in the lineup much more. I don't know if I'm all in the experiment working, but I do like where their head's at and kind of in that same mold of Weston Wilson that you can plug and play him wherever. Just creates more flexibility there. So there's no harm in trying in my eyes. Let's see how it shapes out. But I wouldn't mind it if Sosa turns into like a full utility guy.
Exactly. I am waiting for the lineup card one day if it's going to be Edmundo Sosa in left and Rojas in center, and people are going to go absolutely bizarre about a baseball game in April. Once again, this is Luke and I on the Phillies, brought to you by FOCO. I do want to get to this. I need one sort of hot take from you to end the episode. I have one sitting in the holster that I am ready to drop. I think we're going to see Gabriel Rincones by May.
Okay.
I think this
Okay.
kid's legit.
Wow.
I think the last 2 years we've heard of Adam Miller, Andrew Painter, Justin Crawford, and rightfully so. I think those are, the three big prospects in this organization. They should be getting all the love that they do get, and they should probably be getting more. Something about this kid. I'm getting a weird vibe around this kid. I don't know what it is. He's got the swing, he's got the pop, he's got the hair to play outfield. This kid's got everything. I think his best shot, would be an unfortunate injury to somebody on the team. I don't think he's going to get an immediate call up. But what I do think could happen is if you get through, say, a month of the season and you're not getting a ton of Rojas sort of bat, I think that could be a chance where they look at Rincones. And I think it depends, sort of how he starts off the year. I'm assuming we'll be in AAA, but I don't know. I think we're going to see this kid at the bank this summer.
All right, I like it. I like the belief there. Love that that's coming out. I'll drop my hot take, which is sort of in the same ballpark here. I think Johan Rojas wins the everyday starting center spot by the end of the season here. I think Rojas takes a little bit of a leap with his bat. They don't need that much from him. He just has to be able to put the ball in play, bunt a little bit, have those moments where you're just not, a cone at the plate, which we've seen from him at time for sure. So obviously they've sort of strayed away from it. Just reading like the tea leaves here, feels like the organizational belief in Rojas is sort of, decreased a little bit. Like it doesn't feel like he's as cemented a part of their plans as I once felt was the case there. But I do believe you can't teach that level of defense that he produces at the way, the amount of ground that he covers out there. And if he can just be a little bit competent at the plate, I think there's something there. So I've been a Rojas believer. We're still waiting on things, and he still is a ways to go. There's no doubt about it. But I think he's doing all the right things, has put in the work this offseason, and we'll see how things ultimately shape out. So I'm a believer in Rojas. I think he can win this everyday starting center field spot.
Listen, I love it. I think he has the chance. I think if there's a year for him to sort of take it, I think it's this one. Because I think you don't exactly know what you're going to get from Kepler. I think I'm more high on Kepler than other people. I think this is a chance for him to sort of get into a new role in a new team in a new city, and I think show the pop that he's had for his whole career. But this isn't by any means a great outfield.
No.
And if Rojas can hit 250, would you take 250 with 25 stolen bases?
Yes. You can sign me up for that.
Exactly.
Totally
and because this is also where I'm at too, and this is sort of the last point, and then we're going to get out of here. But there is so many people around the league that value the center field position way more than they need to. I would love for everybody that's listening, or for everybody that's a Johan Rojas hater, or they don't like Brandon Marsh, I would love for you to go look up the average batting average of the center fielder across Major League Baseball. It's about 215, I think. Wow. It's around 215, 220. Center field is not a hitting position. It never really has been. It is and it isn't. But if you have $100 million right fielder and a guy that you signed to play left field that has some serious pop, and you have a $350 million first baseman and a $300 million shortstop and a $100 million DH and a $120 million catcher, you don't need, 15 home runs and a 290 average out of your center fielder. So I think Rojas has the chance. I love that take. I think he could get there. I don't think he's there yet, but I think he definitely has the chance to get there eventually throughout this year.
Yeah, and I hope it's the case. I mean, the best thing for this Phillies team is for him to take that next step at the plate, be capable. Just again,
because he's an unbelievable defender, dude.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of my point as well. Is you're not going to win or lose the World Series based on what Johan Rojas hits at the plate. It's about the other guys to deliver in that spot here. And Castellanos, to be honest, I think deserves more credit than he gets for how far he's come defensively here. That I can't believe
not a single error last year. He didn't make one error. Granted,
neither did the statue.
Make sure you don't go look at the the outs above average because that's down the drain. But 0 errors last year. He's an interesting defender. That was always the funniest part about Castellanos too, is because like he plays 162 games and he makes 0 errors, but he's really not that good of a defender. Like he is, but like watching him get to a ball in the gap is like getting my teeth pulled. Like the dude lets every ball to right center get in the gap. But hey, 0 errors last year.
Hey, that's why I'm throwing hype on the Johan Rojas train here, that you can kind of combat that there. But yeah, I mean, as far as Castellanos, I'll note that I didn't see any of these statues anywhere commit an error last year, so it might not be the most telling statistic. But the point being here that I do think there's opportunity for Rojas. If he can earn the chance and just take a little bit of a stride forward, I feel like it makes sense. And I was encouraged. Again, I'm not going to dive too deep in what he did down in the Dominican Republic this offseason, but the point is he's putting in the work and trying, and I'm willing to give the guy a little bit of a chance here. So I think he's a winning baseball player. I think he showed some real flashes, and I would like to see him take that next step.
I love it. Well, Sean, thank you for joining me. This has been Luke and I on the Phillies. You can follow Sean at Sean_Barnard1 on Twitter. We are 4 months out from our last podcast, but we are back. Myself and Sean are sort of uploading every day on YouTube for Phillies Digest. We are pumping out videos over there. We're all over Twitter, everything that you need for the gambler as well. Once again, this has been Luke and I on the Phillies, brought to you by FOCO. I am Luke Arcaini, and we'll see you next time. Peace.